This is a little story about my very first runaway. It was in my bus, not on a customer's bus. And it was really scary. You have no idea how loud and how crazy it is. I had just got done doing some work on the bus and had set up a tripod and videoed the first startup after it was done. And everything was great, but there was an oil leak coming from under the blower. So I had to remove the blower. When I removed the blower, I didn't put any of the emergency shutdown flapper. I didn't put any of that on there. I just had the open blower lobes right on the engine. And then I went to start it again. I don't have rear start controls on my bus, so I started it from the front. And within a half a second, that thing was 2,000 RPM. By the time I got out the door, it had to be 4,000 RPM. As I ran around the back to actually shut it down, I grabbed the rack control to shut it off with that, and I couldn't budge it. It wouldn't move at all. And the engine is just screaming, maybe 6,000 RPM. I have no idea. It was the craziest, loudest noise I'd ever heard. The rack control wouldn't shut it down. I didn't know what to do. There was no emergency flapper on there. I tried to shut down the regular shutdown solenoid, wouldn't budge. I was ready to just give up. I didn't know what to do. And I looked down on the ground. I had if you ever heard when you don't know what to do and you're done, to throw in the towel, I had a beach towel laying on the ground. And I just took that beach towel and threw it right into the blower. And then the blower just disintegrated it. It ate it up, and flaming chunks of beach towel came flying out of the exhaust of the motor while it was screaming. And then here's the really sad thing, is that I drove my wife's BMW that day, and I had parked it right behind the bus, and I had some stuff in the passenger seat, so I left the passenger door open on the BMW, and all those flaming chunks of towel went flying into the BMW because the door was open. But luckily, as the towel got ingested, it did seize the blower. It wedged in there. It broke the blower drive shaft. The fuel pump was spinning so fast that when it instantly had to stop, it twisted the little prongs off that are the drive for the fuel pump. They twisted off, and the fuel pump then seized because it was so hot and there was no more fuel flowing through it to cool it down. There was no other damage done to the engine. My friend sold me a new blower drive shaft for $10. I cleaned all the towel out of the blower itself. The air box was just filled with chunks of the towel. I cleaned out each of the cylinders. I turned them over by hand and pulled out all the chunks of towel that were in the cylinders. It was insane. But I had a spare fuel pump, and my friend sold me that blower drive gear for $10. So it didn't cost me anything, in parts to get it fixed. But it was the scariest thing ever. And then the reason that it ended up being a runaway is when I had put the blower back on, the back of the governor housing had broken. It was cracked and I didn't know it. Well, it broke, and this corner piece of metal was wedged inside of there up against the part where the governor has counterweights that swing out, and those counterweights couldn't move the lever back and forth because there was a piece of steel wedged in it. And that's why I couldn't shut the rack back to off, because that piece of steel was up against what I was doing, or aluminum, I guess it is. But anyways, you'll see the chunk of it here in this picture, that it was just crazy. So that was my super scary first runaway. This Indian guy that was a truck driver that was in the parking lot where I was, he came running over with a fire extinguisher because he didn't know what had happened. It was just so loud. And then when it shut down, there was so much smoke because the engine was still spinning, but the fuel injectors were squirting, but there was no more oxygen coming through because the blower was broke. And then when he saw that, the flaming chunks of towel flying out of the exhaust into the car, it was just a horrible thing. And there are still soot marks inside of my wife's car, and that was like 5 years ago. And she wasn't real happy about that.